every nation, well, it has these core documents, right? The basic rules that define how everything works, what it promises its people. Today, we're diving deep into one of those, the Constitution of Nepal 2072.
Exactly. And think of this as your quick guide, your shortcut, really, to understanding the heart of Nepal's legal and political setup. We've waded through the dense stuff to pull out the key insights.
What really matters.
Yeah, the surprising bits. And just a clear picture of how this constitution shapes Nepal today. Without getting bogged down in all the jargon, our mission basically is to pull out the essential knowledge on rights, state structure, and those key institutions.
Makes sense. And we've got some great excerpts here from the Constitution itself. This isn't just abstract legal theory. It's about what it means to be Nepali, who counts as a citizen, the rights everyone has, how the country governs itself. So let's just jump in. What is Nepal, according to this document?
Well, it starts right off defining Nepal's core national interest. It points to border security, economic well-being, prosperity, basically, and the dignity of Nepal itself.
Dignity. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and what's notable is it doesn't just list them. It stresses their importance, saying actions against these interests, punishable by federal law. It really sets a high standard for what's fundamental.
Right. You need that clear definition of what you're protecting and aiming for. And it's more than just, borders or money. It's that less tangible thing, national dignity. What about language? How does Nepal define itself linguistically?
It takes a pretty inclusive approach, actually. It says all mother tongues spoken in Nepal are recognized as national languages.
All of them. Wow.
Yeah, it's a big nod to the country's diversity. But then it also sets Nepali in the Devanagari script as the official language for, government business.
Okay, so a main official language.
Right. But crucially, states can also designate additional official languages if a majority of people there speak something else. And there's a language commission set up to advise on all these language matters. It's a balance, really.
Unity, but respecting the diversity. I like that. And what about the symbols, the things we see and hear that represent Nepal?
Oh, the Constitution gets quite detailed here. The national flag, for instance. It's not just two red triangles. Schedule 1 literally spells out how to draw it. The angles, proportions, everything.
The exact geometry.
Precisely. Plus the white crescent moon and the 12-rayed sun inside. Then you've got the national anthem. Schedule 2 has the lyrics. The coat of arms is laid out in Schedule 3.
Okay.
And it goes on. Rhododendron arboreum is the national flower. Crimson, the national color, like the flag box. Yeah. The cow is the national animal. And the Lophophorus, that beautiful pheasant, is the national bird.
It's very specific, really paints a picture.
It grounds the identity in tangible things, yeah.
Okay, moving from symbols to people. Citizenship. How does someone actually become a Nepali citizen under this constitution?
Right. It sets out a few ways. The main one is citizenship by descent. So if you had it before this constitution, or if your parents were citizens when you were born. Yeah. There's also a specific rule for kids born in Nepal to parents who are citizens by birth before this constitution. When those kids grow up, they can get citizenship by descent if both parents were Nepali citizens when they got their own citizenship. It addresses a kind of historical situation.
Got it. So that's the main route. What if you weren't born into it?
Well, there's naturalized citizenship. The government of Nepal can grant that based on federal law. They can also grant honorary citizenship, again, following the law.
Oh, okay.
And there's a rule for when new territory joins Nepal. People living there at the time become citizens, though, again, federal law sets the details.
That covers most bases. But I saw something in our notes about gender identity.
Yes. This is really quite progressive. When someone gets citizenship by descent, they can choose to have either their mother's or father's name on the certificate. And crucially, it also includes recognizing their gender identity.
That's significant.
It really is a big step for inclusivity, acknowledging different family structures and identities. And finally, it just says the details, acquiring, reacquiring, losing citizenship, that's all handled by federal law. Give some flexibility.
A really important move there. Okay, let's get into what many see as the core of any constitution. Fundamental rights and duties. This section looks huge. Where do we even start?
Let's start with the big one. The right to equality. The Constitution is super clear. Everyone is equal before the law, period.
Standard democratic principle.
Right, but it goes further. It bans discrimination based on a really long list: origin, religion, race, caste, tribe, sex, physical condition, health, marital status, pregnancy, economic status, language, region, ideology. basically any similar ground.
That is comprehensive.
And that ban applies to general laws and actions by the state itself. It's a very strong stance against unfair treatment.
But I see something about special provisions for certain groups. Is that a contradiction?
Not really. It's about equity. It recognizes that, historical inequalities exist. So the Constitution allows the state to make special laws to protect, empower, or develop groups that are socially or culturally disadvantaged.
Like affirmative action.
Exactly. And the list is broad. Women, Dalit, indigenous groups, Métis, Tharu, Muslims, marginalized communities, farmers, laborers, youth, kids, seniors, gender and sexual minorities, people with disabilities, pregnant individuals, the helpless, people from backward regions, even poor cause area.
So it aims to level the playing field.
Precisely. And equality also means equal pay for equal work, social security, and this is big equal rights for all genders to inherit ancestral property.
That's a major step for gender equality. So it's about formal equality and actively fixing existing inequalities. What about freedom of expression? Always vital.
The Constitution guarantees freedom of opinion and expression. Speech, publishing, broadcasting through any media, press freedom, it's all there. And importantly, it explicitly says no prior censorship on publications or broadcasting.
No censorship. Okay.
But, like most places, it's not absolute. The state can impose reasonable restrictions by law.
For what reason?
To protect things like sovereignty, territorial integrity, national unity, harmony between states or communities. Also, to prevent sedition, defamation, contempt of court, inciting crime, or things against public decency, morality, dignity of labor, or inciting caste or gender discrimination. It's a balancing act.
Freedom, but with clear lines to protect society and individuals. Does it say anything specific about protecting the media itself?
Yes, quite strongly. It says media outlets, radio, TV, online, print, whatever, can't be shut down, have their equipment seized, or registration canceled just because of the content they published or broadcast.
That's a key protection.
It is. Now, laws can regulate media, but the principle against arbitrary closure based on content is there. Plus, communication channels, press, broadcast phones can't be interrupted except according to law. It aims to stop the government just silencing voices it doesn't like.
Seems crucial for keeping information flowing. Let's shift to rights around justice. What are the guarantees?
Several key ones. If you're arrested, you have the right to know why, immediately.
Yeah.
And the right to choose and talk to a lawyer. Fair trial is guaranteed.
Okay.
Now, it does allow for preventive detention if there's an immediate threat to sovereignty, territorial integrity, or public order.
Okay, but with limits.
Yes, important ones. The family has to be informed quickly. And if the detention turns out to be unlawful or in bad faith, the person has a right to compensation. So even in security situations, rights aren't totally ignored.
Safeguards, even then. Now, a really significant right for Nepal's context, the one against untouchability and discrimination.
Absolutely critical. The Constitution bans untouchability and discrimination any form, anywhere public or private, based on origin, caste, tribe, community, profession, occupation, or physical condition. Full stop.
No ambiguity there.
None. It adds that no one can be stopped from buying goods or services based on caste or tribe. No workplace discrimination based on caste. And importantly, these acts are classed as serious social offenses, punishable by law, and victims get compensation. It's a powerful legal statement against deep-rooted hierarchy.
A necessary stand. Good to see it spelled out so clearly. What about property rights?
Everyone has the right to acquire, own, sell, deal with property. But it's subject to law and progressive taxation. Richer people might pay higher property taxes.
Makes sense.
The state can only take property for a public purpose and only with fair compensation paid according to law. The exception is property gained illegally. The state can take that.
Right.
It also allows the state to do land reforms, to boost agriculture, modernize farming, protect the environment. So it balances individual rights with public good and addressing land inequality.
Protecting property, but not absolutely, especially if it's ill-gotten or if society needs land reform. Wow, we're covering a lot of rights. What else stands out?
Well, there's the right against exploitation. No forced labor, slavery, trafficking. The right to language and culture lets people use and preserve their languages, participate in cultural life, protect their heritage.
Important for diversity.
Definitely. Then, the right to employment. Everyone has the right to work, choose their job. Federal law sets the terms, conditions, unemployment benefits, and rights to food and housing, recognizing the state's role in ensuring people have enough food and adequate housing, and protection from unfair eviction.
And you mentioned specific rights for certain groups earlier.
Yes, the Constitution really focuses here. Specific articles protect the rights of women, children, Dalit, and senior citizens.
Can you give some examples?
For women, equal inheritance, no discrimination, proportional representation in state bodies, special opportunities, positive discrimination in education, health, jobs, Social Security, and equal rights in property and family matters.
Yeah.
For children, right to a name, birth registration, education, healthcare, care development, protection from dangerous work, child marriage, trafficking, abduction, armed groups, abuse, torture, juvenile-friendly justice, special protection for vulnerable kids,
Very detailed.
for Dalit, proportional representation everywhere, special provisions for empowerment and public service, jobs, free education scholarships, lands for the landless, housing for the homeless, fair distribution of resources, and for senior citizens, special protection and Social Security from the state.
It really does sound like a constitution deeply committed to social justice, trying to lift up historically marginalized groups.
That thread runs right through it. There's also a broader right to social justice, pushing for inclusive participation of backward groups in state bodies, special help for poor communities in education, health, jobs, housing, Social Security.
So it's systemic.
Yes. And a separate right to Social Security for the needy, disabled, helpless, single women, kids, those who can't care for themselves, endangered tribes. Plus, consumer rights, quality goods, compensation for bad ones, and the right not to be exiled.
Can't kick citizens out.
Nope. And finally, the right to constitutional remedies. You can go to the Supreme Court or high courts if your fundamental rights are violated. And crucially, the Constitution obliges the state to actually make the laws needed to implement all these rights.
An incredible list. Now, beyond rights and what the state must do, there are also guiding principles and policies, right? Sort of the state's philosophy.
Exactly. Part 4 covers directive principles, policies, and obligations. These are like broad guidelines for governing. Maybe not directly enforceable in court, but they set the direction.
What's the overall aim?
The political goal is a public welfare system, state prioritizing citizen well-being. Social and cultural goal, a just society, national unity through social harmony, respecting diversity. Economic goal, sustainable, fast growth, socialist-oriented, aiming for an independent, prosperous economy, fair distribution, ending inequality. International relations goal, enhance Nepal's dignity, protect interests through sovereign equality.
Big picture stuff. And are there specific policies mentioned?
Oh yes, lots. Policies on national unity and security, safeguarding sovereignty, good relations between government levels and communities, political governance policies, good governance, rule of law, fair access to services, social cultural policies, civilized society, protecting heritage, ending discrimination, promoting languages.
Sounds comprehensive.
It is. Economic policies, national development via public, private, cooperative sectors, fair distribution, protecting local industry, consumers. Then detailed policies on agriculture, land reform, infrastructure, tech, natural resources, education, health, labor, Social Security, basic needs, justice reform, tourism, international relations, all emphasizing inclusion, development, sovereignty. It's like a national wish list or roadmap.
A detailed roadmap indeed. And what are the state's fundamental obligations tied to these?
The main obligation is to make Nepal prosperous and affluent. How? By protecting and promoting fundamental and human rights and progressively implementing all those principles and policies we just talked about, all while guarding Nepal's freedom, sovereignty, territory, independence.
And is there accountability?
Yes. The government has to give an annual report to the president on how it's doing implementing these principles, policies, obligations. The president then tables it in the federal parliament for review.
So rights, guiding principles, and a mechanism to check progress. Let's switch gears to structure. How is the state actually set up? It's federal, right?
Yes, a federal democratic republic, 3 levels. Right. Federation, central, state, 7 provinces, and local municipalities. Each level exercises power based on the Constitution and their own laws within their sphere.
And how is power divided?
The Constitution uses schedules to list powers. Schedule 5, Federal Exclusive Powers Defense, Foreign Policy, things needing a national approach. Schedule 6, State Exclusive Powers may be state police. Local works within the state. Schedule 7, Concurrent powers for federal and state, like some aspects of education, health.
Okay, shared responsibilities.
Schedule 8, Local Exclusive Powers, local roads, community services. And Schedule 9, Concurrent powers shared by all 3 levels.
That's quite a division. What if laws clash between levels?
Clear hierarchy. Federal law wins over state or local law if they conflict. State law wins over local law. and any powers not listed in those schedules. Those are residual powers belonging to the Federation.
Got it. What about money? How are finances handled in this federal system?
Each level, federal, state, local, can make its own financial laws, budgets, policies within its jurisdiction. The federal government sets overall national financial policies and standards.
And taxes, revenue.
Each level can impose taxes within its constitutional powers and collect that revenue. How that revenue is shared between levels is guided by principles like balance, transparency, national needs, state-local autonomy, service delivery, revenue capacity, development needs, reducing imbalances and poverty. The exact formula is set by a federal law.
A complex but crucial part of making federalism work, ensuring everyone has the resources. Okay, let's look at some key federal institutions. President and Vice President.
The President is head of state, elected by an electoral college, members of the federal parliament, both houses, and all the state assemblies. Votes are weighted, kind of reflecting state populations.
It's interesting weighting.
Yeah. The Constitution details the election, the 5-year term, the oath, how they can be removed, like impeachment by Parliament. The Vice President is elected the same way, similar term.
And the executive power lies with?
The Prime Minister, who is the head of government, appointed by the President, following specific rules, especially if no party has a majority in the House of Representatives.
The lower house.
Right. The PM forms a council of ministers no more than 25 members, and it has to be inclusive, reflecting national diversity. The PM and Cabinet are collectively responsible to the House of Representatives. The Constitution also covers votes of confidence and when the PM can advise dissolving the House.
Okay, on to the legislature. The federal parliament has 2 houses, you said.
Yes, bicameral. The House of Representatives and the National Assembly. The House has 275 members. 165 are elected directly first past the post from districts based on geography and population.
Winner takes all in those districts.
Exactly. The other 110 members are elected by proportional representation, with the whole country as one constituency. This PR system specifically aims to ensure representation for marginalized groups, women, Dalit, indigenous peoples, Khas Arya, Madhesi, Tharu, Muslims, people from backward regions. Geographic balance, too. And parties must include persons with disabilities on their lists.
So direct local representation and broader proportional inclusion.
Right. The House term is 5 years, extendable by a year in an emergency.
And the other house, the National Assembly.
That's the upper house. It's permanent, can't be dissolved. 59 members total. 56 are elected from the 7 states, 8 per state. The electors are the state assembly members and the heads of local governments in that state.
Okay.
And within each state's 8 seats, there are quotas. 3 women, 1 Dalit, 1 person with disability, or from a minority group. The remaining 3 members of the whole assembly are nominated by the president based on contributions to national life.
Their terms.
6 years, but staggered. 1/3 retire every 2 years. Ensures continuity.
So a mix of direct election, proportional representation, state representation, and nominated expertise. What about the courts? The judiciary?
It's a hierarchy. Supreme Court at the top, then high courts, 1 per state, then district courts. The Supreme Court interprets the Constitution and laws, supervises lower courts. It has power to issue writs, to enforce fundamental rights, settle big constitutional questions.
And that constitutional bench you mentioned.
Yes, within the Supreme Court. It handles specific constitutional disputes, especially about power division between federal, state, local levels. The Constitution details how judges are appointed, their qualifications, tenure, removal, and the roles of the Judicial Council and Judicial Service Commission in appointments and discipline.
And the Attorney General.
The government's chief legal advisor represents the government in court, decides whether to prosecute cases for the government, appointed by the president on the PM's recommendation. Their status is high pay equivalent to a Supreme Court justice.
Right. Now, those constitutional commissions, again, you listed quite a few. What's their main purpose?
They're independent watchdogs, basically, set up by the Constitution to oversee specific areas, ensure accountability, protect rights. You have the CIAA, fighting corruption, the Auditor General checking government accounts, the Public Service Commission handling civil service recruitment, the Election Commission running elections.
Key functions.
Then the National Human Rights Commission, the National Natural Resources and Fiscal Commission for revenue sharing, plus commissions for specific groups. Women, Dalit, inclusion, indigenous nationalities, Madhesi, Tharu, Muslim commissions.
A lot of oversight.
Yeah. They investigate, audit, recruit, manage elections, protect rights, ensure fiscal fairness, promote specific group interests. Generally, appointed by the president via the Constitutional Council, fixed terms, specific qualifications, removal procedures. designed to be independent checks on power.
A robust system. And the National Security Council.
The key body for national security policy, defense, chaired by the PM, includes defense, home, foreign, finance ministers, the chief secretary, army chief, advises the government on security, army mobilization, reports annually to the president.
Okay, let's talk political parties. How are they regulated?
The Constitution guarantees the right to form and run parties committed to an ideology, but subject to laws restricting things like threats to sovereignty or inciting violence discrimination.
Standard limits.
Parties must register with the Election Commission. Their own constitutions must be democratic internal elections at least every 5 years. Single-party systems are banned. To contest elections, they need separate registration, must submit annual audited financial reports, transparency, and accountability.
Promoting a multi-party, accountable system. What about extreme situations? Emergency powers.
The president can declare a state of emergency, but only on the cabinet's recommendation, and only for grave threats, sovereignty, territory, security, or severe economic crisis.
High threshold.
And it needs Parliament's approval. A 2/3 majority in both houses within a month. Just the National Assembly if the House is dissolved. It lasts 3 months initially, can be extended 3 months at a time, again needing that 2/3 vote. During an emergency, some fundamental rights can be suspended, as specified.
Powerful, but with serious checks. Finally, how can this Constitution itself be changed? The amendment process.
It's specific and quite demanding. Crucially, no amendment can harm sovereignty, territorial integrity, independence, or the people's sovereignty. That's off limits.
A protected core.
Exactly. Bills to amend can start in either house. For certain articles, especially affecting state powers or the basic structure, you also need consent from a majority of the state assemblies.
Federal consent needed sometimes.
Yes. After any needed state consent, the bill must pass both the House and the National Assembly by a 2/3 majority of their total members. Then it goes to the president for assent. It's a high bar, ensuring broad agreement for fundamental changes.
A deliberate process to protect the core but allow evolution. We have covered so much ground, from national identity right through to amendments. What are the big takeaways for you?
Well, a few things really stand out. The strong focus on fundamental rights and social justice is undeniable, especially those detailed provisions for marginalized groups. That's a major theme.
Definitely.
Then, the whole complex structure of federalism, dividing powers and resources between the 3 levels. It shows a real commitment, despite the obvious challenges. And third, all those independent commissions, a clear attempt to build in checks, balances, and accountability.
Yeah, and for me, something specific that struck me was that requirement for citizenship by descent for top jobs like heads of security. It says a lot about wanting deep roots for those positions. And honestly, the sheer detail on drawing the flag in Schedule 1, it just highlights how much symbolic weight these things carry.
Absolutely. Those details are revealing. And for you listening, understanding these basics, the rights, the structure, the institutions, it gives you such a crucial lens for understanding Nepal today. Whether you're interested in politics, business, or just understanding the world, it provides really valuable context.
So as you think about everything we've unpacked from the Constitution of Nepal 2072, consider this. Given this detailed framework, what do you see as the biggest opportunities and maybe the toughest challenges for Nepal moving forward?
It's definitely a constitution that sets a high bar, and seeing how it plays out in practice is key.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's giving you a clearer picture of the foundational rules shaping Nepal.